Pakistan and India are rich with culture and have great pride unlike any other. Although stemming from the same origins, India and Pakistan are two separate nations with two completely separate identities now. Okay, so let me begin exploring these two great countries. Let's look at the population first. So the population of Pakistan is 198,304,221. And the population density sits at 256 per square kilometer. India's population, on the other hand, is a lot larger. It's at 1,344,238,148. And India, of course, is the second most populated country in the entire world. Its population density is at 450 per square kilometer. Now, when it comes to land size, the land size of India is 3.287 million square kilometers, and that's about 1,269,219 square miles. Pakistan's land size sits at 796,095 square kilometers, which is roughly 307,774 square miles. Now, life expectancy in both countries are pretty similar. In India, the average age is 68.5 years, with males at 67.3 years and females at 69.8 years. The life expectancy in Pakistan is 67.7 years, males at 65.8 and females at 69.8. Now, in taking a look at the cultures of these two countries, so secularism in India refers to the equal treatment of all religions by the state, with the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution of India enacted in 1976. It asserted that India is a secular nation. However, neither India's constitution or its laws define the relationship between religion and state, whereas Pakistan is a Muslim state. India has around an 80% Hindu population, while Islam is a predominant religion in Pakistan, so much so that it has the second largest Muslim population in the world. Pakistan alone, which is 5 times smaller than India, has 300 dialects and languages. Now, this count in India is a lot more than 1,500. But for the official languages, the Constitution of India designates the official language of the government of India as Hindi, as well as English. And there is no national language in India. Pakistan's national language is Urdu, which along with English is also the official language. Now, in 2015, the government in Pakistan announced plans to actually make Urdu the sole official language and get rid of English as the second official language. When it comes to the dollars, the money of India and Pakistan, Pakistan uses the Pakistani rupee and India uses the Indian rupee. The GDP at India sits at 9.489 trillion US dollars, and the GDP of Pakistan is at 1.060 trillion US dollars. And this is based on the purchasing power parity. When it comes to food now, India is a big place, of course, right? Now, it used to be even bigger, consisting of areas that are now Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar, which was formerly known as Burma. So the whole idea of Indian food is not necessarily 100% accurate, although the term Pakistani cuisine can also be pretty vague, considering that Pakistan didn't exist until 1947. But Pakistani cuisine can be considered, let's say, a subset of Indian cuisine. But like when you look at the subsets, it's pretty diverse with all the different spices and the ingredients. We don't see too much differences in terms of the food in India and Pakistan. But let's just take, for example, the kind of food that you would find cooking in a South Indian home, the dal, the rasam, the sambars, etc. It's completely different from Pakistan's kebabs or the naans and curries and meats that are served in an Indian restaurant. But that's enough food talk for me. Kind of getting hungry. I'm probably going to chow down after this episode. But let's look at the militaries of these two countries. So currently, Pakistan's military is ranked 13th in the world. Pakistan's armed forces are made up by 3 different branches. We have the Pakistan Army, the Pakistan Air Force, and the Pakistan Navy. Now, the available manpower in Pakistan sits at 95 million people, and their total military personnel sits at 1,135,000. That includes active personnel, which is 620,000, and reserve personnel, which is 515,000 people. And the defense budget in Pakistan increased to $8.7 billion this year. Now, they're the 6th largest in the world in terms of active military personnel and the largest among Muslim countries. And this next one is huge. It's reported that Pakistan is the only Muslim-majority country to possess nuclear weapons. Their military also has a special service group, which is known as the SSG. It's the primary special operations force of the Pakistan Army. Because the SSG go through a huge range of just intense training, in 2015 they were actually listed as the best special forces group in the entire world. Now looking at the military of India. So India has the 3rd largest military in terms of active frontline personnel. But when we take a look at the total military power, they are ranked 4th on the global scale. The defense budget is way up to $53.5 billion. And actually, the Indian Ministry of Defense says India will need $233 billion to meet its military budget in 11 years. Now, there's something pretty cool I want to throw in here. In late 2016, India actually completed its nuclear triad by adding a strategic nuclear submarine, the INS Arnhand, into its military. India has become one of the only countries to do so. And if you're unsure what a nuclear triad is, well, pretty much it's the ability to launch nuclear warheads from land and from the sky as well as from the sea as well. When we look at the film industry, Lollywood is the oldest film industry of Pakistan, cinema, based in Lahore. But up until 2007 though, Lahore was the center of Pakistan cinema, producing films in both Punjabi and Urdu. However, since 2007, Karachi has overtaken Lahore in Urdu film productions. And for some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing the word Lollywood. So where did that name actually come from anyways? Well, it was coined back in 1989 by a gossip columnist named Salim Nasser, and he wrote for a glamour magazine that was published in Karachi. Now, Bollywood, of course, in India is only a part of the larger Indian cinema, also known as Indiewood. In 2016, Bollywood earned $2.4 billion, and they make up about 43% of the overall revenue coming from India's entire film industry. So India and Pakistan have shared and continue to share a very extremely turbulent historical relationship. The Indian subcontinent used to be ruled by the British Empire for almost 200 years. Some of you may know this, but when World War II ended, the British were in no position to continue their hold on the Indian subcontinent, and the British partitioned the Indian subcontinent into 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan. On August 14th, Pakistan became an independent country. However, there was really no correct way as how to actually divide the land. So there was a mix of Hindus and Muslims living in the land for generations. And this partition resulted in the loss of life on both sides. Almost 20 million people were displaced from their homes as well. It's been 70 years and these 2 countries continued to overcome various hurdles and now are recognized on the global scale in many different areas. India and Pakistan are 2 countries that probably have one of the biggest love-hate relationships in the world. The Indian subcontinent used to be ruled by the British Empire for almost 200 years, but when World War II ended, the British were in no position to hold on to their stronghold over the Indian subcontinent. But the British didn't leave before partitioning the Indian subcontinent into 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan. On the date of August 14, 1947, Pakistan became an independent country. However, there was no correct way to divide the line with the Hindu majorities as well as the Muslim majorities. How do you divide that? There was a mixture of people of different faiths all over the Indian subcontinent. Because of this improper partitioning of the Indian subcontinent, there was mass-scale casualties on both sides. Violence broke out all over the country and the partition left over 1 million dead and almost 20 million people were displaced from their homes. It's been almost 70 years since this separation, and it goes without saying that the last 70 years haven't been the easiest for either countries. Both of them had to overcome hurdles and challenges. and had to really work hard to get global recognition in many different fields. So we have a little brief history lesson. If you want to find out more about the Indian and Pakistan partition, you got to check out our video, The Truth Behind the India-Pakistan Conflict. I have the link to that down below. I go in a lot of detail about it. But moving forward now, let's take a look at some of the cultural differences, the language differences, as well as there's some differences that exist only because the two places are now two separate countries. But they're not really major differences, it's just the fact that they're two different countries, that's why those differences exist. Now the population of India at the time of filming this is 1,342,552,725. Pakistan's population in comparison is 196,754,400 people. India is considered a secular nation, whereas Pakistan is considered a Muslim state. And just to give you a little bit of background about that, India was conceived as a secular democracy by National Congress leaders such as Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. It was meant to guarantee all the people in the South Asian subcontinent political and religious freedom. However, people like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, considered to be the father of Pakistan, as well as other Muslim Congress leaders, were the driving forces behind the formation of Pakistan, and so it became a Muslim state. And speaking of that, actually, one of the biggest differences between the two countries is religion. Although India is considered a secular nation, by majority, 80% of people identify as Hindu, while of course the majority of people in Pakistan identify as Muslim. It's also interesting to note that Pakistan has the second largest Muslim population in the whole world. Now, one thing to address, and I know the point may be a little controversial, but there's no specific single Pakistan culture separate from a specific Indian culture. It's like having a plate of food, you know, with your rice, chicken, and vegetables, and that plate of food is divided, and then now it's like, oh, we were once the same plate of food, but you have more chicken, so therefore the chicken is your culture. Wait, but that was part of my culture. Yeah, probably not the best analogy, but I think you get the point. Pakistan alone is 5 times smaller than India, and there's about 300 dialects and languages. The count for dialects and languages in India number over 1,500. But let's take a look more into the language differences. There's 2 official languages for communication in Pakistan, and those are Urdu and English. Now, there are several regional languages of Pakistan, and those are Sindhi, Punjabi, Baluchi, Pashto, Saraiki, Godri, and Hindko. But the national language of Pakistan is Urdu. When it comes to the languages in India, the 2 official languages for communication in India are English and Hindi. And yes, there are also regional languages, and those are Gujarati, Marathi, Tamil, Urdu as well, Sanskrit, Punjabi, and there's many more. And the national language in India is Hindi. The national animal of India is this guy, the Bengal tiger. The markhor is the national animal of Pakistan, and I had to look this up, and it's a species of goat. I've never heard of this before until this video. In terms of currency, Pakistan uses Pakistani rupees, India uses Indian rupees. Pretty self-explanatory. The most popular greeting in Pakistan is Assalamu alaikum. India, there are several like Namaste, Ram Ram, Jai Sri Ram, and Sat Shri Akal. Now let's talk about the difference in death. Pakistan, after the death of any Muslim, the body actually needs to be buried as quickly as possible from the time of death. This is according to Islamic law. To prepare the body for burial, it has to be washed and covered with kafan. And kafan, you can also call that a shroud or a cloth. Now in India, when a Hindu dies, Hindus don't necessarily bury their bodies. Instead, they're burnt. And after the burning of the bodies, the ashes are sprinkled in the Ganges River or any other sacred body of water. Now, finally, let's talk about the cuisine, the food, the good stuff. As you can tell, India is a big place, right? One of the biggest populations on the planet. And of course, it used to be bigger. It consisted of the areas that are now Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, formerly Burma. So the notion of Indian food is not entirely accurate to begin with. Also, the term Pakistani cuisine is a little bit vague too, because Pakistan didn't exist as a nation until 1947. But for the sake of them now being 2 different countries, we can make a little bit of a distinction here. Pakistani cuisine can be considered a subset of Indian cuisine, but even that subset is pretty diverse, in the sense that the spices and the ingredients in Indian and Pakistani food are pretty much the same, but the way the food is prepared can be quite different. For example, the kind of food that you would find being cooked in a South Indian home would be dal, rasam, sambar, etc. It's completely different from Pakistani kebabs. So in many Pakistani dishes, it's very meat heavy, but there's a difference between those meat heavy dishes and the vegetarian dishes in some parts of India. So yeah, again, describing something as Indian food and Pakistani food is a bit tricky because food isn't necessarily national, it's more regional. Don't think anyone can be like, no, this is Indian food, this is Pakistani food, two different things. It's just not possible. So there you guys go. These are some of the differences between the two countries, Pakistan and India. We see that the certain fundamental belief systems of each country sort of color the whole culture of each country. But one thing to remember is that there's no better nation because better is subjective, it's not objective. So rather than nitpicking someone else's culture or religious beliefs, let's aim to really understand where they're coming from because despite everything else, we're all the same but different. We're the exact same in the fact that we're human beings, but different in the fact that we're all individuals and have different self-expression. So I say to all of you, my brothers and sisters, I love and appreciate all of you for simply being you. I may not agree with everything that you guys have to say, and you may not necessarily agree with everything that I have to say in terms of a personal perspective, but if you are a person living on this earth, you have some value. And never let anyone tell you that you're worthless.